Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Charles Sabansu, and welcome you guys to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Show, where we cover everything from sports, hot topics, classic debates, entertainment, and where we give you guys a fresh perspective on things and how we see them. And today we have a pretty interesting show in store for you guys. But before we get into it, please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. So yesterday, it was yesterday evening, I was going through the internet and I came across a sit down that Charles Barkley had on the Dan Patrick Show. He always goes on the Dan Patrick Show. But for this particular visit, I was very keen to hear what he had to say, because as you guys know, the NBA rejected the offer from Warner Brothers Discovery and TNT Sports, so they're no longer going to be partners in that deal. And Charles Barkley basically made his thoughts clear about this. He stated this publicly, where he essentially said that the NBA prioritized the NBA and the NBA players prioritized profit over the fans. Right? He stated his opinion. Everyone knows about this. But there's another side to this, because what we know is that this means that inside the NBA is only going to be around for one more year. So the question then becomes, what happens after that? Now, if you've been following the news around Charles Barkley over the last few months, you will know that he has said that this is going to be his last year in sports media, that he's going to be retiring, right? He has stated that this is going to be his last year in sports. So with that background information, let's get to what he said. So he goes on the Dan Patrick Show, and the first thing they start talking about is this new deal with the NBA and Amazon. They're discussing that, right? And then it gets to the inevitable point where Dan Patrick says to him, so what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? Right? Have you been in conversations with any of these networks? He said no. Have you been in conversations with ESPN specifically? And then Charles Barkley said, I've been in conversation on network. He's like, have you been talking to ESPN? Or Amazon or whatever. Then he says, and then as he's talking about it, Charles basically says he would be willing to listen to any offer that any of them could bring if the offer is essentially one he can't refuse. And he's not against the idea of going to ESPN and work with people like Stephen A. Smith, or go to Amazon, or go to NBC. And I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting, given the fact that he just said that he's looking to retire. So these are the comments that we want to focus on today. Before we get into what Charles had to say, today's video is brought to you by our sponsor, Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. For example, I am super excited about the upcoming MLB games. With Game Time tickets, I can easily pick the best tickets for me. I love that I can choose between different deals. I have the option to select the cheaper deal, the best option deal, or my favorite, the flash deal. The flash deal gives me the option to find discounts that I can only find on Game Time. Once I select the ticket I want, I can view my seat. And it's not just restricted to baseball. I can also look for the best ticket deals for other sports like football, the NBA, concerts, comedy, or other theater shows. Included in my purchase, I also have a 24-hour return guarantee, a lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. And remember, whenever you support this sponsor, you're supporting this channel. Thank you. So what we want to do now is want to play exactly what Charles had to say. I want you guys to take a listen to it in its entirety, and then we're going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to what Charles Barkley had to say here.
Like I say, right now, I'm not trying to be this or this or this. Right now, my intention is to retire, because then, I mean, you've done it quite a few times, in fairness, went to another network, started over. I'm not sure. I love TNT so much and the people here. I don't know if I want to go to another network. Like, I'll never say never, but right now my intention is to stay and go out with a bang. We're going to give everything we got next year, because out of loyalty to the NBA and their fans. And I want to say to some of all the fans out there, man, you guys been great. You guys been great to me. When I was in Tahoe a couple of weeks ago, everybody's saying, guys, don't go. I said, dude, we don't want to go, but we're going. First of all, let me say this. This is like the worst kept secret in the history of sports broadcasting. Like, we knew we were done like 5-6 months ago. They're like, well, we're still alive. We're still alive. I'm like, yo, man, please stop lying to us. We know it's over. Just go ahead and announce it. So there is a sense of relief, to be honest with you, to the employees. But I've been spending a lot of time with the employees lately, and they just wanted it to be over because they got to start planning for their future.
Yeah, but why can't you guys still do your show? If I'm Amazon, why wouldn't Amazon say, why don't we capitalize on the best, pregame show that there is out there and bring you guys in, keep everybody in Atlanta, keep all the producers, and you guys, just produce your show?
Well, first of all, you have to ask Ernie that because Ernie is the guy who probably would never leave Turner. But Dan, everything's on the table.
Has somebody spoken to Amazon?
I have spoken to all three networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all three networks.
So you spoke to Amazon?
I have spoke to all three networks, Dan, who got the NBA going forward.
I know Amazon is where you can
Let me
go.
say this. I have spoken for the last 3 months. I've spoken to all the networks.
That doesn't sound like somebody who's going to retire.
Well, Dan, I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen. I mean, first of all, I'd be stupid not to take their call. But the beauty of this situation, I don't have to make any decisions for a year, Dan. But I told all three networks, hey, I'm honored, I'm flattered that y'all want to talk to me, but let's see what happens in a year. So that's the great thing about it from my perspective. I don't have to make any decisions for a year. But like I say, my intention, I'm not trying to play hardball. I'm not trying to get attention. My attention right now is to retire. Like I say, Ernie would never go to another network. I have not talked to Kenny and Shaq, but I have listened to everybody. And like I say, I got a year, Dan. I ain't got to worry about this. All this stuff is just noise for a year, to be honest with you.
Okay, would you go someplace without Ernie or without, let's say, Shaq and Kenny? Let's say Ernie is not leaving, staying TNT Atlanta. Would you, on your own, go to another network to be part of their NBA broadcast?
I'm not frozen. I'm thinking. That's a great question, Dan. I don't know how to answer that question. I ain't gonna never lie to you. I don't know how to answer that question right now because I don't know. First of all, I don't know who's got what going forward. Like when I had these conversations with these companies, they're like, we're finalizing what we're going to have.
Okay.
So I would have to sit back. Hey, ESPN, tell me what you guys got and what you want me to do. Amazon, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. NBC, tell me what you got and what you want me to do. Until they finalize what they got, because there was rumors when we were like, we're going to lose the conference. Even if we retain the NBA, we're going to lose a day of the week. We're going to lose the conference finals every other year. So when I talk to these companies, I says, get back to me when you know what you got.
Okay. That's fair. Amazon's got the money, though.
Dan, everybody's got money. They're paying $2 billion a year.
No. Amazon's got money.
Hey, I'd be a fool not to say I'm not going to listen to Amazon. I'm not that stupid.
I agree. I think you're going to continue to do it. You got to talk to somebody. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, I do, Dan. I'll talk to them all.
So you heard what Charles Barkley had to say, right? You heard what he had to say. I don't know if you guys saw that or listened to that full show. He also spoke about the fact that he signed a $210 million contract, paying him, I think for 10 years, paying him $20 million a year with Warner Brothers. So I don't know how all that's going to work now that they're canceling the show. I don't know how any of that's going to work. So you have that going on over there. But if you listen to him carefully, he said that it would be foolish of him, number one, to not take their calls or listen to them. That's number one. Number two, if you listen towards the tail end of that audio, if you listened, he said, I have spoken to them. They have reached out to me. And essentially he said, what do you guys currently have going on? What shows? What's coming down the pipeline? Does that sound like somebody that's not interested potentially? If you're retired and you're saying you're done, would you be willing to listen to any offers? Of course not. You're done. You're retired. But for the simple fact that he's still willing to listen to them and hear them out, that says something. Let's talk about the potential of him going to ESPN. Could Charles Barkley go to ESPN? Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. Right? Because number one, they're probably the biggest platform out there. So he's going to be on a big platform. Number two, I think if Charles Barkley goes to ESPN, one could make an argument that he would be the biggest voice personality at ESPN. I don't think it's a question. Charles Barkley is better than Pat McAfee. Charles Barkley is better than Stephen A. Smith. Let's just keep it a buck. All right, let's just keep it. What Charles says reverberates around, has more reverberation and ripple effects in the sports media ecosystem than any of those guys. Just the facts, right? This is just what it is. Here's the interesting part, however. I'm not sure Charles would be the prototypical fit that ESPN would want. Here's what I mean by this. ESPN is like any network. You have left-leaning networks, you have right-leaning networks. ESPN is a LeBron James network, left-leaning network, and all of that. Charles, I don't really know what his political views are, because there's some views where he seems to be very conservative and there's some views where he seems to be very liberal. But one thing you do know about him is that when it comes to talking about sports and giving his views on what he is seeing, Charles Barkley doesn't sit up there and twerk it up all day long like the vast majority of people at ESPN do. Give you an example. No one in ESPN is going to have the courage to speak about a LeBron James the way that Charles Barkley does on nobody. There's nobody. Not Stephen A. Smith, not nobody. Charles Barkley his views are so strong that it has caused him to have fractured relationships with a bunch of different NBA players. He fell out with Michael Jordan. I don't really think he's friendly with Kevin Durant. He's had a public back and forth with LeBron James himself for some comments that he made on TNT when he said, does he want all the help and all of that stuff with him and Shaq going back and forth. That's Charles Barkley. And I don't know if ESPN is going to give Charles Barkley that level of freedom to say what he thinks, because it doesn't fit into that network. ESPN is a very transparent network when it comes to the agendas that they want to push. It's quite clear. It's clear as day. And if you put someone like him on the show, he'd be like a renegade on the platform. He'd be like a renegade. He would be like the odd man out. I could see Charles Barkley making a lot of those people on that network look quite uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, looking at how people behave on ESPN, there seems to be a lot of fakeness that goes on that network. I'm just keeping it funky as somebody looking on the outside in. Whenever you have somebody on a particular panel that gives a view that's not an ESPN talking point, all of the other people on the panel begin to get very uncomfortable. You can see it visually. Visual body language. You can see it. They get visually uncomfortable. Oh, did he say that? Oh, wow, he said that? Like, oh, he said that? You sure want to say that? Were you supposed to say that? That's ESPN for you. Very weird vibes that they got going on over there. Very weird, very cliquey. You go to college, you've been in high school, you've been around people like very weird. They got that kind of weird energy and vibe about them. Whereas Charles Barkley, he seems like somebody that if you're around people like him, they're going to be saying some real, you know what? They're going to be saying some real, you know what? And it ain't going to be a bunch of politically correct view. They're going to call it, like, they're going to be saying some real stuff, right? So you're going to get a more raw version of sports, which again is the reason why he's the best in the business. So to bring him to a network like ESPN, I'm not sure it would work. I'm just keeping it funky with you. Number one. Number two, he would be the biggest name on the network. He is bigger than Stephen A. Smith. Sorry, tell y'all. He is. So what you going to do? You going to make him a contributor? Now, he also says something. I don't know if we played that. He said that one of the most important things he's looking at right now is not the money, is the schedule. It's a schedule. because he doesn't want to be working like a slave. He's made jokes about this, about ESPN, how they got people like Stephen A. Smith up there working, 48 hours a day, damn near, right? Obviously, only 24 hours, you get the joke. Working like 6 hours a day. Charles Barkley ain't on that type of time, right? Is he going to have his own show? Is that going to be what he's going to want to do? I don't think he's going to probably want to have his own show in the way like Stephen A. Smith does. He may want to have a panel, but who would you have on a panel with Charles Barkley that would keep? If I could think of some people at ESPN, here are the people I would think of that I think would work well with Charles Barkley if they had a show at ESPN. I'm going to give you guys some personalities, 3 personalities. You can pick a moderator. I would say Charles Barkley, I would say Chris Mad Dog Russo, and I would say Mike Wilbon. Those guys look like if you pair them together, you can get some honest opinions and some pushback at various points. Those guys would seem like a good combination. And then you have a different moderator. Not a Molly Karam, not one of those people, somebody that's going to keep it a little bit more funky, a little bit more gully, right? That's just my view on things, right? That's my view. So what I want to know from you guys, what do you think about this news? Number one. Number two, do you think there's a possibility that Charles Barkley could join ESPN in some capacity and we can see him on TV with Stephen A. Smith in some capacity? Or do you think that, look, Charles is going nowhere inside the NBA, he's retiring? Whatever you guys think, please give your thoughts and comments in the comment section. We catch you guys on the next show. Peace.